Well, greetings, Training for Translators listeners. This is Corinne McKay with episode 27 of the Training for Translators podcast. And unusually, this episode is not based on a post that I wrote for my blog. It's based on something I wrote for LinkedIn. But if you're listening to this podcast, I'm in fact positive that you would enjoy my blog and my newsletter, which you can find at trainingfortranslators.com, in addition to information about upcoming classes and the books I've written. So, the topic of this episode is based on a question that a student in my online course alumni group asked. How do you turn down work from a client, and are they likely to come back to you? Now, I liked this question so much that I answered it on LinkedIn, and I'm now going to expand on my answer because I thought of a few things that I should have included but didn't. And then there were some really interesting comments on LinkedIn that we can talk about also. So, number one, I think it is important to remember that you are running a business and all you owe the client is a polite and direct response, such as, I'm not available for this, but thank you for the request. Now, the part that I did not include in this answer, and that is really, really important, and I do want to emphasize, is you also want to assess what are this client's other options and what is your level of commitment to this client. That's an important thing that I forgot to mention. Let's take two extremes, and this also plays into why I like having a wide range of clients in terms of my commitment level to them. Now, for myself, and you can insert your own examples into this on the, if you want to call it the low end of commitment, where the client has a lot of other options and you're not particularly concerned with losing them if you turn down the assignment. For me, that would be court interpreting. I live in the US state of Colorado, and most of the state courts now assign their interpreting work through an automated system run with software that is called Boost Lingo, that a lot of you, if you are interpreters, may be familiar with. Now, I actually don't mind this. You get an automated notification from Boost Lingo, and it has a button that you just click accept if you're available and decline if you are not available. Now, I would not want to have all of my work assigned in this way because it feels very impersonal, right? It's not even coming from a human, it's just an automated notification. But on the other hand, when you see that type of message, you know that basically you can turn this client down indefinitely without the fear of losing them as a client. They are never going to stop contacting you, even if you turn down every assignment for 6 months and then you start taking work from them again. Now, on the other end of the spectrum would be clients where you are their only person who does what you do. And I actually have at least, I don't specifically ask clients this, but I know that I have a translation direct client and an interpreting direct client who I am the only freelancer they have who does what I do. And so if I just said, sorry, I'm not available, the risk is that they might go find someone else and then never use me again. And so I want to thank the people who mentioned that in the LinkedIn comments because that is a really critical piece of this puzzle that I forgot to mention in my original answer. That one thing to think about if you work with these types of direct clients where there really is no one to replace you is that you really, really need a trusted colleague who you could say, I'm not available, but this person will do the assignment for you. And then you can go back to using me. I mean, you're going to put it in a more business-like way than what I just did, but basically that idea. So thanks to the people who mentioned that in the comments, because that's really critical. And I did not mention it. Okay, next on our list. If you really like this client, I would recommend adding something to that explanation. Like, I'm so disappointed that I'm not available for this. It sounds fascinating, but unfortunately, I'm going to be on vacation that week. And I will say that personally, I barely ever quit a client unless they treat me poorly. For example, they pay late, their project managers are disrespectful to work with, because you never know what's going to happen in your freelance business and when you might need that client or they might improve. So why cut them off if you don't have to? And again, someone mentioned in the comments, which I really appreciated, that they indeed had a client like this, that they turned down every assignment that the client offered because of low rates for several years. And then all of a sudden, for reasons unknown, the client was willing to pay their rates and came back to them. And I have a couple of clients like that. I won't say the details because I don't want them to feel singled out, but where I think right now, this client doesn't seem willing to pay my rates. That's typically the reason that I would repeatedly turn them down. But you never know what might happen in my business or their business. So I actually think that it is barely ever the right thing to do to outright quit a client, tell them to stop contacting you, just politely turn them down over and over and over again. Then let's talk about the difference between translation and interpreting. And this is going to lead us to another subtopic, which is the idea of billable hours per week. Now, in my opinion, it is actually easier to turn down work that has to be done on a certain schedule. So, for example, for me, that would be interpreting because if you're not available, you're not available. You can't be in 2 places at one time, and so I actually find that easier because I just add something like, "I have another assignment at that time," so they know that it's just a question of scheduling. Now, the place where it gets harder is that with translation or writing or anything that is not on a certain schedule, there arises the question, why can't you just fit it in? Couldn't you work overtime in the evening, on a weekend, etc.? Now, to me, the real issue here is that you should be setting your rates so that you can earn your target income in around 25 billable hours a week. Now, the reason that I said that in an annoying, pedantic way is because a lot of people confuse that with working hours. What I'm talking about is the number of hours that you spend generating income, which, particularly if you are trying to move into the direct client market, you're going to spend a lot more time on non billable work. Things like marketing, accounting, answering emails, posting on LinkedIn to attract new clients to you, issuing quotes for jobs that don't end up panning out, things like that, doing tests, doing test assignments, all of that stuff. So, what I would really, really recommend is that you set your rates so that if you earn income about 25 hours a week, which probably means that you're working 35 to 40, then you will reach your target income. And the point here is that leaves some wiggle room, particularly if you do translation, writing, things that can be done on your own schedule. It leaves some wiggle room in case two good clients need you at once. And if you are having to earn income 40 hours a week or more in order to earn your target income, then that is a big problem because you have no time to do this non-billable work, which probably means you're just not doing it, right? That your accounting is done at the absolute last minute, that you're not doing any marketing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So someone commented in the comments as well that they found that helpful and that they did the math for themselves and found out that that is in fact possible. So for example, for me, about the minimum level of income that I am aiming for these days is around 125,000 US dollars a year because I want something that is close to a six-figure salaried job. Now this year, I'm actually going to be a bit over that. I'll talk about that in a future episode. The 2026 halftime show, I think I'm on track to earn more like 135,000 this year, but let's take 125. I like to give myself about 6 weeks vacation, so I have 46 weeks to earn that amount of money, and then 25 billable hours a week is for me 108 US dollars an hour. We all have major variables. First of all, if you're a translator, you probably don't get paid by the hour. And second of all, if you're an interpreter, you probably have a minimum charge and you may or may not be working the whole amount of time that that minimum charge covers. So, for example, for me, one of my kind of yellow zone work possibilities is court interpreting because here in Colorado, We get paid 65 US dollars an hour if we're certified for a language other than Spanish, but you get a 2-hour minimum. And most of the time, those are remote assignments that take 30 minutes or less. So there's always going to be sort of a gray area unless you outright get paid by the hour, which most of us don't. I do have a couple of writing clients who outright pay me by the hour, and I charge them more than $108 an hour so that I know I'm reaching my target rate. Now, the question of whether the client will come back, in a sense, it's anyone's guess. Really important aspect is if you know that the client would have to go find a completely different translator, interpreter, writer, you don't let that happen, right? You, at the very least, have a trusted colleague who they can work with. You don't just turn them down. Now, if the client is an agency or a client that has a direct client that has multiple freelancers, you honestly don't know. We don't know if they're going to come back to you again, but I think responding right away, which I'll come back to in a second, with a polite and upbeat response, such as, "So sorry that I'm not available, but I really appreciate the request." I think you stack the deck in your favor. And then let's talk about responding right away. Like, I know that we all, including me, are in a constant battle to not be so tied to our email and texts and WhatsApp messages and phone calls and things like that. But I will tell you that I have a couple of interpreting clients who have told me that these are clients that don't use those automated systems where they have an actual human being who emails you to see if you're available. I have a couple of clients who have told me that they always contact me first because I respond right away. And they say, "We know that nobody is available all the time, but what we really appreciate is that you typically respond in 5 to 10 minutes," which I really, really try to do. So I think if you do scheduled work where the human being is contacting you to see, can you take this translation? Can you do this interpreting assignment? Don't underestimate what a business advantage it is that you respond right away because they at least have an answer. Okay, I hope that's helpful. That's episode 27 of the Training for Translators podcast. I'm Corinne McKay, and you can find out more about my online courses, books, and read more than 1,500 blog posts for free on my website, trainingfortranslators.com. I record the podcast on a Shure MV7 Plus microphone using Audacity, and it is technologically hosted on Libsyn. I'll talk to you in a future episode.